What's happening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unparalleled Sports Talk with Joe Kwame Fisher Jones. As always, I'm him. And we're talking NFL, so I'm joined by my man Chris Franklin of NJ.com. Great pre-draft or pre-show talk, Chris. So hopefully we can carry that energy to the new show and that transition with energy. Philadelphia Eagles. They have no energy. They look bad right now, Chris. And as a resident member of the media, it's fun to talk about. But as a long-suffering Eagles fan, this is starting to get scary now. They sit 8-4 with the Dallas Cowgirls. I don't want to say close behind them, but trending. I guess tracking. We're tracking the Cowgirls at this. Excuse me, Cowboys. We're trending. We're tracking the Cowboys at 6-6-1. Do the Cowboys actually have a chance of catching the Eagles? Let's start there.
That's their best route to get in. I think it's legitimate. I don't think they'll actually overtake them
Okay.
because when you look at, I look at even next week's schedule. I know the Eagles still play the Cowboys lost to the Lions, and the Eagles play on Monday night against the Chargers. But even when you look at next week's game, you got the Eagles against the Raiders, who are going to have to go over cross country. So you got to worry about that. And then the Cowboys have the Vikings. And you saw in that game against the Lions put a lot of pressure. They had a lot of help on the front four. But the thing you saw that kind of worried you is how the Cowboys were handled. They didn't have a guy in their left tackle, and you're wondering if he's going to be back for the next game or not. And so you see that, and you're like, okay, it's the Lions. We get that. If they thought the pressure was bad, wait till you see Brian Flores' defense and how much pressure they bring that way too. We all know he loves to blitz. He's done so well with that defense that you're going to hear his name being mentioned in this next head coaching cycle because he's been that good for the last 2 years. So I look at that way the offense is. George Pickens is lollygagging around, can't do anything. Like CeeDee Lamb's got a concussion. He's still he's broke all. You hope it's if you're the Cowboys, you hope it's good that he's back up and running in the week. If not, you're really in trouble because we saw George Pickens lollygagging running around, trying to be the man, trying to prove he's a $40 million man, which is not looking like that in a big game.
Yeah.
So if you lose back-to-back games, I think it's really, really done. And you take the heart, you don't have that momentum. For the Eagles, you at least have the Raiders, even though they don't have Chick Kelly anymore. They switched over to the opposite. We saw the Raiders offense still look bad when
Yeah.
after they fired Chip. So I think it's one of those things they have enough. Even with the games, they got two against Commanders. I think that last one, we Cabo looking forward to Cabo and stuff like that. So I think overall, you look. I think the Eagles still take that, but it's uncomfortably close at the moment right now, especially with the way
Yeah.
the Eagles are struggling.
That's a great way to put it. Uncomfortably close. And it's scary because they shouldn't have I didn't know the Raiders fired Trip Kelly.
Yeah, it's good. It was and I love the fact that supposedly like he may not have been and the rumor is he may have been running more Pete Carroll stuff more than he was running his own stuff because there are instances where he's calling play calls that he's not actually that's not in the playbook, more likely in his and not his formation. Everybody's like, Chip, what are you doing? Like it's not in the book. What are you this is
Well,
not a lot of things. So
well, listen.
it,
Uh, if I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna go down driving my way. So Pete Carroll, you say what you want to say. If I'm gonna lose doing it my damn way, not your way. But anyway, I didn't know that you threw that in my ear, and it looks like it broke a few days. Man, this is a busy time of year for us fathers. But anyway, going back to the Eagles. The thing that makes it unsettling for me, the thing that makes it concerning me is not, I try not to live through past trauma. So what that means is I'm trying not to go back to 2 years ago and say, well, this is what it looks like 2 years ago. With that said, the lack of urgency, the lack of aggression, the malaise that they seem to be in, I feel like it's eerily similar, not to 2 years ago, but to teams that are not happy, that are not enjoying football, I guess. And then you look at Dallas. Dallas is moving, and I'm not too concerned about the Eagles' loss Dallas because Dak historically has played well against the Eagles. You go back to his record; he's won an insane amount of games against the Eagles. But you just look at how confident other teams are playing against Philly. It's kind of like we're not in on the secret. Like the other players are in on the secret. They know something's going on over there. We're not in. And every week I'm going and thinking, okay, this is going to be the week Philly gets together, and every week they keep doing the same thing. So that's my concern. It's not so much can the Cowboys catch him, But should we be concerned that the Cowboys have an opportunity? Because they're 8 and Philly's 8-4. That's not a bad record. But at one point, weren't they something like 7-1? Weren't they like ridiculous record? You know what I mean? So now you're 8-4 going down the track. You're talking about the Raiders. I feel like at this point, it doesn't matter who's coming across the line. It could be the Frankfurt Friars. It doesn't matter who it is. Philly should be concerned. There should be some concern in Philly. So with that said, let's transition past, can the Cowboys catch them? Can Philly rebound? Can they find their magic? Can they get back? I mean, you're there in Philly. You're hearing things. You're in the locker room. What do you see that should give us hope for optimism?
I'll tell you this. Even last year. I was in the Bears last week. I was in the Bears locker room, and it was very telling. I was there around the infamous speakeasy interview with C.J. Gardner Johnson, and when it comes out, you can see my phone in a little bit, so it cracks in and out. I'm like, all right, let me get that stuff. He's talking on the phone. He's looking into there, and they asked him. I saw the video later. They asked him, "Are you sure that?" And I was like, "Why is he doing his wink thing?" And he looked back. He says, "The Eagles' offense predictable?" And CJ just looks right in the camera, gives this big wink, and he's like, telling him, "Yeah, I spoke to a couple of former Eagles. I talked to a couple other couple of Bears linemen, what have you. It's pretty predictable right now." And that's where it falls to me. When you hear predictability, it falls on the offensive coordinator and the head coach in terms of that play calling. They need to get out of shotgun for that. And until they figure out how to mix these things up, how to mix up various looks, how to not know, okay, first down, here comes the inside zone when 80% of the time, or inside run 80% of the time, and not mix it up and make teams guess a lot more until they put Saquon, and they line up and shotgun, not shotgun, but under center and pistol more, you're going to have these same results. And the defense if you can't get sustain the offensive success, then you look at what's happening now with the defense. I think they're tired. I think they've been on the field too long, and you don't have Jalen Carter now for the next 2 weeks probably because you got those procedures on his shoulders. So now you're like, oh great, the Bears just come off of running against you that much. Well, you see the same thing coming up this Monday night with the Lion Hampton coming back, and Vidal and we know Jim Harbaugh is going to try to run the ball down the throats. So I see a lot of stuff. They talk about complimentary football. This is an instance where complimentary football is not having it is really hurting this team.
Can they change their offense this late in the game? Like, can they change design this late in the game? I guess because that's what you're saying. It's not so much the plays; it's the design of the plays that you're saying need to change. Can they do that this late in the game?
You could throw in some different looks. Like there's been times that within this past year, even last year, where they may throw a play or two, or may throw a different formation. We saw them with the 6-man line, so it's possible. You got the language in there. That's why I spent so much time in training camp to put the certain verbiage in there so they can make little variations. It's a matter of if these guys can come up with something that's creative enough that builds on the stuff they run. B, if they show a play, they come back to it and show that different variation and not just use it once and never use it again. And C, if the quarterback and the wide receiver and the running back can all execute at the same time, because we're not seeing that level of execution like we saw last year. So all those factors into it. I mean, football is complex at times, but some of the things are simple. If you see 6 men in the box, if you see 7, 8 men in the box, you try to go defeat. You try to go throw the pass a little bit more. If you see certain zone looks, you throw certain areas. It baffles me that how we're seeing some of this play out with this team. It's crazy.
I wonder if I wonder if they can make that change, but more. But I don't see the Eagles are tough, man, because it's not a personnel issue. You know what I mean? You look at sports like you said, football isn't tough, but the thing about football more than any other sport, personnel and execution have to kind of be parallel. Like you can execute till you're blue in the face, but if you don't have the personnel, like we all know now that while the Patriots didn't have great skill position players, they had the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. So that personnel, was right there. And then you had the execution. He always made his so it was okay. You say, well, he wasn't always the greatest player, greatest quarterback in the game. Well, gosh, when did he become that? Because he was winning Super Bowls when you didn't think he was great. And then when he became great, he didn't win Super Bowls. Then he came back and won. So it was like at some point in line, he became great. And we were just late to the party. I just wonder with the Eagles, they have the personnel. Is it an execution thing? Is it one of the things where they're just not? And you're mentioning that they can change some schemes and everything. Football is hard. I always feel like football is one of those things where we're going to come out and we're going to execute. And if we have the personnel to execute, it doesn't matter if you know what we're doing, because we can execute because we have better personnel than you. And I feel like they have personnel, at least the skill position players. Maybe the line isn't as good as we think it is. Could that be the issue?
There's some things with the line. I think that when you look at Landon Dickerson, I think he's way hurt way worse than what he really is right now. I mean, remember before training camp he got hurt, and then I think it lingered in a little bit, came back a little too quick, and then once you get through the throes of the season, you get that.
Yeah.
I think the right guard Tyler Steen, there's been issues there, getting too much pressure on the interior, so much so that I personally would think about making a change. But the problem is you have to go to Brett Toth, who that makes you lighter and depth wise. And personally, I don't know. To me, to make a change, we know Stoutland doesn't like to make wholesale changes, and you're going to have Lane John. You don't have Lane Johnson now, so you've got to work out the communication there. When Lane comes back, you'd rather have him working with Steen because they've been working for so much long together as well too. So it's some issues there with the line. There's been missed things, I think. But one thing I still think they've done, and they haven't been able to do, is that when you're lining up in the shotgun, you're pretty much telling which way you're going to run, especially those offset running back. Like when you're running
Yeah.
offset, you got the running back to the left. You don't see that pitch out to or that sweep to the short side or sweep to the one side a lot. It usually is the running back going and either doing like a zone read look, a power read look, and then make his decision that way, or it's straight handoff. And pretty much know if he's going one way, it's pretty much a run, which ways he's going to go. So I just don't. They're giving tells. And defenses have picked up on those tells, and until they start to really come with something to counteract that, you can have the best offensive line in the world. Defense knows where you're going. And they get to the point. A second, they start shifting over to that point. And you throw out audible. You can't do it. Good luck.
So I hear everything you're saying. Sounds like we're in trouble. Sounds like Eagle fans were in trouble, but as podcasters, we got a lot to talk about because it's like they're going to make it happen. All right, I want to transition to teams that are not in trouble. Chicago Bears are 9-3. The New England Patriots are 11-2. This is unbelievable. Like there was no way we thought. Well, you thought the Patriots would be good, and I've given you credit for that. You were the one person I thought that said the Patriots would be good, but you didn't say they'd be leading the conference in December. Think about that. Leading the conference in December, and there's no reason to believe that they won't do it again next year. Same thing with the Bears. There's no reason to, because there's nothing this season. Like you look at the Bears schedule, or you look at what the Bears have done. Green Bay is 8-3-1. Minnesota is 4-8. So it's not like that. And Detroit is 8-5. So three of the teams in their division are playoff contenders. So this isn't like a fluke where everybody's bad. To me, the biggest surprise is the Patriots, just because when I consider that Holt DeMayo is their quarterback, when I consider, when I consider that Vrabel is their head coach, and while he had success in Tennessee, I didn't consider him a top tier NFL coach. And maybe I missed the boat on that. But to me, that what the Patriots are doing, and I watched that game against the Raiders earlier in the year where the Raiders won, but the Patriots competed. And they made mistakes and still competed through their mistakes, which is a sign of a good team. I'm shocked to see a team that is, for all intents and purposes, Denver's 10-2. We can talk about Denver too. But I think the Patriots are going to get the number one seed. So to me, that's the biggest surprise. I don't think the Bears are going to get the number one seed. Where do you sit on this? I kind of know your answer, so I'll change the question. How impressed have you been with the Patriots this season? And knowing what you knew going into the preseason, did you think this was an outside shot that they would be the number one seed in the NFL?
I didn't think they'd be number one seed. I thought maybe they win division. I thought they win division, and the worst they can be like a 6 or a 7. I think one thing they've done is they've taken care of business within their own division, because we all know the AFC East has become all of a sudden the equivalent of the AFC South at times, where you have one dominant team. And I say that with all due respect to the Bills, but the Bills, just their personnel is just not as good. Yeah, Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen and the Bills. If that was a group, it's like ain't nobody coming to see you, James Cook. It's like they're almost going after Temptation.
Nobody coming to see you, Otis.
That's how it feels like that. Josh Allen's the voices in that movie. He's the voice. So you look at that, and the Jets dumpster fire, and then you also look at Miami Dolphins. They get dumpster fire, but at least putting the fire out a little bit. Still bad. So I look at that. I look at the way that Vrabel has communicated. I think Mike Vrabel, to me by far, Ben Johnson, no. Mike Vrabel is the NFL Coach of the Year, in my opinion. You look at what he's
Yeah,
taken.
without a
You have to
doubt.
get that. You have to
Without a
because
doubt.
you'll hear some Ben Johnson talk on, and you'll hear some Sean McVay talk from the media too, going, "Well, look at Sean. He's got the Rams in this high." And yeah, you'll hear some of that too. But I look at the way that he's taken his team. He's made them believe early on, and the biggest thing is buying. He's got them to buy in that they were a good team to begin with early on. He was tough on his guys, and he was tough. He's tough on that defense. And look at that defense the way it's playing. It's playing lights out. You look at the offense; it's making enough plays to win. And Drake May, the way he's Josh McDaniels is Josh McDaniels should never take another head coaching job again because we know what he is as a head coach. He's off. When he's an offensive coordinator, he can make things happen, and we see what's going on with that. And he can develop quarterbacks. So I'm thoroughly impressed by what the Patriots have done. And if I'm going to the Bears, yeah, I like what they've done for them so far. I like the way they're playing. Ben Johnson's come in and taken that team and put them in the right direction. But there's one key thing we haven't heard. They have a 62 record against the conference, playing a not so great
Exactly.
schedule. And here's the key number I'm looking at: the division. They're 1-2. You have two big games against the Packers that are coming up. You still got to play them. I think they get swept by the Packers in both of them. I think the Packers win that division outright. So I
Yeah.
think they're that. Even though Jordan Love is so you don't know which Jordan Love you're getting, then it's frustrating. So some good stuff in it.
I didn't think the Bears would beat the Eagles, and they did. I'm shocked they beat the Eagles. I'm not gonna lie, and that's why I opened the show with concern in Philly because I didn't think, and I don't believe the Bears are better than the Eagles personnel wise. I just feel like the Eagles they play with more confidence, and the Eagles just kind of squandered away. The Eagles have had big leads in games and given it up, so I feel like they can capture that. But solely focusing on the Bears, I still don't believe in Chicago. I still don't believe in Chicago. I I believe in Caleb, but I don't believe in Chicago. And Ben Johnson, look, great story. I'm old enough to remember that in the NFL, the guy that won the coach of the year in year one is usually being fired in year three. You know what I mean? And I'm old enough to remember that. And I can give you names for days. But the point is that's usually how that works. Exactly. So
Sorry, Paul.
it's I look at what they're doing in New England, and the difference to me in New England is they've got a guy in Vrabel who, while I didn't think he was this good of a coach, has a history of maximizing the talent around him. Now he's also got a history of letting guys walk. I think Derrick Henry and AJ Brown can confirm that. But he still manages to get the most out of his team. And the one thing he's got in New England that he didn't have in Tennessee, he's got a legit number one starter quarterback. Tannehill is cute. He's a cute little, pretty little girl. Not pretty girl and stuff. He pretty. He pretty. They got a they got a guy now. He top prize at the fair. And whether you want to accept it or not, whether you want to give, like they drafted this guy they drafted this guy where he is. He's showing it early on. He's all bite, no bark. I like Mayo. And excuse me, May. Keep calling him. I want to call him Mayo. I know it's not his name, but it's just catchy. You know what I mean? It's just catchy. I know it's May, but you want to call him Mayo. But not. And the completion percentage tells me he's taking what needs to be there, what he needs to take. He's not getting too excited. He's competing. You know, I like that. And their defense, they play through contact. They're a well-oiled machine right now. And when they get better parts, they're going to be able to go faster and further. And then you look at the AFC East. You mentioned Miami. You mentioned Buffalo. And we know the Jets are 2 thumbs down. So there's no reason to believe that anything's going to change. Buffalo's 8-4. They're about what we thought they'd be. They're going to lose in the second round of the playoffs because that's what they usually do. They lose their second playoff game. That's how Buffalo rolls. So we know what Buffalo's going to ride up in. We don't know what New England's going to do in the playoffs. But when you look at who they're going to be playing, there's no reason to believe they can't continue that magic. What say you?
Well, see, and it's I can see that because, and the thing is going to happen is if they get this number one spot, and I'm looking at the teams that they're going to face right now, they better hope that those wild card teams, if say one of them, like you look at that first round, potential matchups right now as it stands, Jaguars playing the Colts, the Broncos playing the Bills, and the Ravens playing the Chargers. I really think one of those wild card teams are going to beat some of those division winners. The Ravens are leaking oil, even though they're playing, even though they're right now they're leading the AFC North. I think they're going to leak oil. The Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, yeah,
Yeah, the
I don't think
Jaguars
they're
with
going to
Trevor
win two.
Lawrence.
I think the Texans overtake them eventually. I think the Texans are in that spot. I think so. If the Texans are at 3-6, I take the Texans. If it's a situation where the Broncos have to face the Bills on the road, the Bills be on the road, I can see a legitimate. I can give a legitimate thing about the Bills potentially winning that game. So if that's the case, even if it's the Chargers, all of a sudden now I have to hope that May can find and make enough plays in a situation he's never been in against one of those two teams. And if it's the Bills again he has to face, I'm not so sure they get out to that third to the AFC Championship game, if I'm being honest. But at least right now, the way that they're playing and the way they're doing it is good experience to set up. I think there's real Super Bowl run comes next year because at least they'll get their foot in the dance. They'll see what it's like. They'll know what it takes to win. And remember, that was a knock on Vrabel as well too, because they had. I remember the Titans were up on the Chiefs in one of those AFC Championship games, and eventually Chiefs went on to win. So I look at them like it's a good stepping stone. It's a really, really great stepping stone to be in this position now. Even if they get that once, I'm not so sure that the Patriots will be able to go on and make and turn this into a Super Bowl appearance.
I disagree. I think the Patriots are going to. I'd be shocked if the Patriots don't make the Super Bowl. I look at that record, but more than that, I look at who's coming up. I don't have faith in any of those teams coming up. And if you go way back to when we started the NFL season, I said I didn't believe it was going to be the Ravens, and I didn't believe it was going to be the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So I don't know who it's going to be, but I didn't think it was them because I felt, and I tell no lies. I said those very words. I said I felt like the Eagles exposed the Chiefs, and all the King's horses and all the King's men weren't going to be able to make Kansas City a Super Bowl contender again. And the Ravens, they wet the bed. They wet the bed too many times to all of a sudden get over the hump. They are a team that they're this generation's Milwaukee Bucks. If you're an NBA fan, there's you want to go back. They're this generation's and if people remember the Buffalo Bills with the 4 straight Super Bowls, they beat the Miami Dolphins and to get to one of those Super Bowls. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Were always there to get to those Super Bowls. That's what the Ravens are. They're the Miami Dolphins. They're the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the other team in the AFC that doesn't make it, and you forget about them as time goes on. You know, I actually think that we're looking at a Pats team that's going to make it happen this year. It's going to shock a lot of people. They're going to get a week off the rest. Vrabel's going to come back that first playoff game. They're going to be the underdog. So they're going to play that whole whoever wins, however it lands out, they're going to be that underdog team. And then here's a little news flash. Those are teams you named, not one of them I have faith in going into the playoffs. Not the Ravens, not the Jaguars, not the Colts, not the Steelers, or whomever may sneak in that chart. Doesn't matter. I don't look at any of those teams. None of those teams strike fear in me. And I look at a team that's since go has been going in the Pats. So yeah, I actually, as crazy as it sounds, I'm gonna put my vote in New England. I think New England goes to the Super Bowl. Final word on segment to you. Then we got
I
transition.
think you know what, and more I think about this, if it's to a point, I think they'll stay at they'll win a one. You got to watch out for the Texans. I really think no. Look at their defense. Look at it. If I'm the Patriots, the team I'm
I
worried about is
choose
the
not to
Texans.
look at their defense.
The Texans defense is legit, man.
Yeah,
You
they.
see the way they're playing, and they can make it dirty. And once they get
Mhm.
that, if they make that game dirty, you telling me Drake. I know CJ Stroud's not playing well, but they're getting healthy at the right time. They're getting all their guys back. on offense. Nico Collins, you're getting all those weapons back on offense. And now you get to, if you go in a cold weather game up north with it's not going to be a great favorable passing conditions, and you got to rely on your ground game and other short plays to do that. Do you see Drake May making methodical long drives against that
Yes.
Texans defense? I
Yes.
don't know, man.
Because he's done it. Like, that's the thing. He's done it and doing it. And here's the thing. Do I see Drake May? I say yes, you say no. You know who I don't see, though? CJ Stroud. I don't see him making those plays because he's been in his career. And you can say whatever you want to say, but that's been him. Up and down, up and down, up and down. I'm not so convinced that going into New England, a dome team in the South is going to come in. I mean, this isn't even a Southern team, but this is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He struggled in Peyton Manning going into – dude, it doesn't snow in New England in January, December. It snows. It's not cold in New England in January and December. It's cold. I don't see it happening. I don't think there's a shot in hell. Like, I'm going to say it again. You could give them 5-6 shooters. I don't think they got a shot in hell with Houston. So I got to leave that there because we got about 4 minutes left in the segment. I got to ask you this question. 189 wins, 113 losses, 19 years of gracing the sidelines. Is it time for Mike Tomlin to move out of Pittsburgh?
As crazy as it sounds, I think you still need to stay because the devil you know is better than the one you don't. And you look at I know Pittsburgh has a history of finding the right guys. You look at this, unless it's Brian Flores, unless you know you're getting Flores, unless you know you're getting, there's no real great offensive mind coming out this year. So unless you know you're getting him, even Marcus Freeman, unless you get Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame coach or you're getting Brian Flores, there's nobody that really wows me. And if you can't get them there, how are you going to lure them with? We have a quarterback? No, you don't. We're going to have a high pick? No, you don't. Well, we have the right wide receiver. No, I don't think you do. Our defense is legit. I'll give you that. Who are you going to lure out? So at least they put themselves in a position, right or wrong, to at least have him for at least one more year because it's just there ain't nobody out that there's not anybody out there that I feel comfortable enough to get rid of Mike Tomlin to replay that. I don't care if you start they tried to push him to go to Penn State. I think Mike Tomlin's the right guy or at least for next season. We have to because there's nobody else that I think is a great head coaching prospect right now. They can lure in.
We got 3 minutes in the segment. Unfortunately, Chris, I'm about to take all the air out of the segment. I apologize in advance. I'm out here in Northern California. The Sacramento Kings are struggling right now. And people keep talking about, oh, they should do a rebuild like Oklahoma City. They need to do this. They need to do that, like this team and that team. But here's the thing about teams that win. They're always find the guy that you didn't find. They always get the guy that you didn't think about. So you mentioned Brian Flores, which would be a good hire. But I think Pittsburgh has done a great job. Bill Cowher was a defensive coordinator, and it was years ago. But he wasn't the hot defensive coordinator. He wasn't the guy. I remember that it was going to be supposed to be Marty Schottenheimer. That's what's supposed to become. And they decided to go with Cowher, and it worked out for him. Mike Tomlin, I believe, was a defensive backs coach in Tampa Bay. All right. Turned out to be a pretty solid hire for him. I think Tom's a pretty decent coach. 19 years tells me otherwise. Their next coach is a guy you and I have never heard of. Their next coach is going to be a guy that we don't know about who's going to come in and breathe life into that situation. Similar to what the Sacramento Kings need to do, similar to what losing teams need to do. You have to change the culture. And in order to do that, you have to change it with somebody that's never been a part of anything. Because now you're building something. So they're coming in, and as men, we struggle to do this. As men, we often want to try to pick up where we left off. Now we got to start all over. And that's what they're going to have to do in Pittsburgh. They don't have a quarterback. You're damn right they don't. They don't have offensive skill players. You're damn right they don't. Their defense is but it ain't real. So you got to start all over. So the best way to start all over is with a guy who's just beginning. And he's a guy that, yes, it's time for Tomlin to go. Not in a mean way, not in a bad way, not in a, but sometimes it really isn't me. It really isn't you. It really is me. Sometimes that's the case. In this situation, that's what it is. Not only is it time for Tomlin to go, take your man, take your credit card, take your bank book, take everything you came with. Take Aaron Rodgers, take Watt, take everything you came with. Because we got to start from the beginning. And what does starting from the beginning look like? It's ugly. It's bare. It's bread and mayonnaise and pepper sandwiches, but it's the beginning of something. And that's what Pittsburgh needs to do. Unfortunately, that for us is not the beginning, it is the end of this episode of Unparalleled Sports Talk. If you enjoyed the podcast, I'm sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever your podcast platform allows you to do. Here's Chris Franklin. I'm Kwame Fisher Jones. Until next week, we appreciate your time and you're busy.